Long time no see, Andrew.
Yes, it's so good to see you. As if we haven't just spoken for 20 minutes before the
No, no, we
introduction.
haven't seen each other for years now.
It's been years. And isn't it amazing how our numbers are growing? We have millions of views now.
Yeah, billions and one. No, it's like
Yes, yes. Especially when we talk about subjects like the Kabbalah and the Sphirot and the non-dual mysticism. Just the people are coming like crazy. They just want to buy more and more of this,
especially if we
esoteric
talk about
knowledge.
the deep systems theoretic difference between congestion and what was the other one? Um,
Yeah, constipation and
constipation.
congestion. Constipation is one thing. I was trying to explain to Tom because he's German and Germans don't understand this. Constipation is one thing and congestion is another. Those are two separate things.
Yeah, I had some issues. Let's say it
He
like
had some
that.
issues with
I had some
he had some
issues.
serious issues.
Yes. Mhm.
Well, I wanted to say I had a wonderful podcast last night with Zevi Slavin from the Seekers of Unity. He's a really cool guy. He's a Orthodox Jew, but he's extremely open and he talks to everybody from all different kinds of faith. And he talks, and he sort of would kind of destroy your image of what an Orthodox Jew would be, very quickly. Um,
So
he
he's not
gave me
like Ben
some,
Shapiro or what?
not in the least. He's not he doesn't talk politics so much. We didn't talk politics. He doesn't have any right wing or left wing agenda. He's really deep into studying. Well, he's studying his own mystical tradition, but also studying different traditions, like Sufis and what he told me about the about the Hasidic tradition, is that it's all about sex basically.
Oh, really? Do
Yes.
tell.
So you normally we think of we think that this is sort of that they're a Puritan movement of some kind, but the whole thing is about eroticism, is about the Shekinah, is about the feminine, is about bringing together the feminine and the masculine, and the way he was talking, it almost sounded like Hindu or Buddhist tantra using Jewish terminology.
So they're still degenerates or what?
I don't. Yeah, I think I don't know them, and
I'm making
Zevi
note.
is
Taking
he's
note.
not a degenerate. He's a handsome young man, a YouTuber. Um, but what is very very interesting is at the moment, right? When I lived in Montreal, I lived in a Hasidic neighborhood, and those guys they don't talk to goys. They don't talk to people who are non-Jewish. They were just completely a closed community, walking around with their hats and their beards and
Right.
their um where at the moment the Hasidus are speaking out on YouTube, right? And there's this guy named Rabbi Morris Friedman that my wife listens to, and various people from that tradition who are speaking out. And he's one of the kind of younger, cooler versions of that. And he talks to people in the esoteric communities. He talks to various people. He talks to John Vervaeke. He talks to all kinds of people.
So there's
And
like a tantric, quasi tantric, aspect of.
That's definitely there in that tradition.
How does
It
that
may
play
be
out?
hard to access and not very well known, but it's absolutely there. Um,
Let's talk about orthodox sex then. Like what? How does it play out?
yeah. Well, I mean, there's all kinds of different ones, so you can't make a generalization. I don't know enough about it to speak about it in any expertise, but um, but one of the things, I guess the problem people would have would be about this chosen people thing, and we're the chosen people versus the rest of the world. But that's not how this guy thinks at all. It's more like okay, that's his tradition, and it works, and it's a non-dual tradition, a genuine non-dual tradition. But other traditions work as well. So there wasn't any. He didn't have any of this chauvinistic, quality that fundamentalists have. So there's fundamentalist orthodox. He didn't even like the word orthodox that much because he says it's not quite accurate. He thinks that they're very heterodox, the original sort of they come from the tradition of the Baal Shem Tov. And Baal Shem Tov's like a Zen master. He tells all these wild stories, and and also Rabbi Nachman was his grandson. All this beautiful kind of stories. And in the 13th century, Moses de Leon was the writer of this. Well, he channeled this book called the Zohar, which is this mystical text, and it's full of erotic stuff. You know, it's not Christian. It's not Protestantism by any means.
All right. So
it's not uptight about sexuality, and it's but you know, but it is, you know, traditional Judaism. In other words, you follow the 600 rules of the Torah, and you know, you have various behaviors and ways you act, but
when you say it's like non-dual, and you say there's a aspect of tantra within there, embedded in there, you know, so what's the methodology of
well, the Malkuth, right, which is also which is at the bottom of the Sphirot, is the feminine, or the Shekinah, and the Keter, which is at the top, is like the masculine, or the right, and those are non-dual, and the whole system is like the meditations in the body, where, you know, all the Sphirot are different, represent different parts of the body, represent different parts of the cosmos, and it's sort of that whole system is about uniting the feminine and the masculine, and it's one big sexual metaphor.
Okay, so what kind of non-duality are you talking about? Because, like, I know some meditative states, some non-dual states, that really non-duality in the sense that the vanishing of all differences. So, you know, so, and
yes, that's beyond the dualities, right? So it's the non-duality of duality and non-duality, right? The non-dual Dzogchen state is beyond that separation, but then you work with the primordial duality, Adam and Eve, or whatever, you know, sense of separation.
How does it play out for them? It's like, do they meditate?
They do all kinds of things. They don't need to meditate. I told him in the podcast, when he described, you can listen to the podcast, and he talks about what the Orthodox Jews do in terms of practices, some of the things, but there's millions of things they do, right? They don't need a meditation app. They have a lot of things that they do, a lot of practices, all kinds of practices.
Mm.
They do things from when they wake up in the morning to when they go to bed at night. They just do all these practices.
Mm.
You know, in the midst of their lives, in the same way that a monk in a monastery would have a full-on sort of practice. They do that in the midst of their family and their, you know, family lives. And you know, and the other thing he was saying is, like, unlike the Neoplatonic traditions, which tend to be Gnostic and dualist, they don't separate the material from the spiritual in that sense. There's a non-duality between the material and the spiritual. The material is everything. It's not separate from the spiritual.
Mm. Okay, is that, I mean, like, how about kosher food?
Yeah, well, that he's a traditional Jew, so that's what he does. Yeah, all those rules, all those laws.
Because I was like seeing this girl, you know, she was a lawyer from New York, and she came to Mallorca, and she had like this neat little side business to make like kosher food for Orthodox Jews in New York. And so my mind was blown in the way it's like how kosher food is prepared. You know, it's like that's an arduous and complicated process to, you know, make pastry, that like kosher pastry, and the business was booming because nobody was like really doing kosher pastry, and so it's like who touches what when.
Yeah.
It's like, are you fucking crazy? Just give me some sweets, you know?
But that's Judaism, and that's what it is. I mean, you know, if you were living in a Buddhist monastery or a Christian monastery, you know, Judaism doesn't separate the monastic life from the daily life. So when I lived in a Zen monastery, for example, there was behavioral rules, all kinds of behavioral ways of acting and behaving and doing things, and there's endless amounts of. You know, it's a moralistic thing, but it's just a form of training.
Right.
So somebody was there was a Q&A, and somebody asked him, you know, I'm really into, you know, I really love this Judaism. They had kind of a Jewish envy going, right? I really want, how could I do this? And he said, no, you shouldn't, because, you know, you have to know Hebrew and you know, right. if you want to learn surfing, you have to, there's a certain training that you have to do to get there. You can't just
Right.
become a Jew or something.
Yeah.
So he wasn't. There's no proselytizing at all in that tradition. It's like, okay, if that's what he is, but he doesn't say, oh, you should become an Orthodox Jew.
Yeah.
Maybe you should look at the Noahide laws, which are like the Noahide, I think they're called. They have something for non-Jews who like Judaism, and it's called the Noahide laws, and there's 7 of them, and they're very basic. They're like
That's for the
something
goys or what? Goys are
yeah. So they can partake in the temple.
Mm. Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't get chauvinist. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what most people, probably modern people, would say. Why the fuck would I do any of that? But you shouldn't do any of that. That's for them to do. It's like that's their thing.
So this thing that stuck with you was, the modern approach that he had to all of this.
Well, just his ability to sort of speak out to all the different mystical traditions in general, and not be kind of chauvinistically attached to his. Like often when I hear Christians talk, they say this: we have the ultimate religion here, and that's it. And I felt a kinship to him because I practice Buddhist Vajrayana, and Buddhist Vajrayana is it's a kind of practice that you would never proselytize people. You never say you should become a Vajrayanist. I think the Orthodox tradition is the same. Somebody would have to want to do that and want to take all the steps and want to do all those weird things that you do in esoteric traditions.
Yeah.
But you would never say to the public that they should do those things. They would have to find that interest in themselves and that connection and that
Yeah, well, that's what Christianity is famous for, preaching and trying to convert people, and know all better stance.
No better than everybody, and I mean that seems to be the problem with Christianity. When Christianity gets over that, there are some interesting, esoteric Christian traditions or inner Christian traditions, I think, that are very interesting. But then the whole we have the ultimate story of existence thing is problematic for me. Even though they do have an ultimate story, but there are many ultimate stories for many ultimate traditions,
I mean, I think it's because Christianity was originally so tight linked to the papacy and the Caesar of Rome. So when there was like a transference of power back, in the first centuries, and so the Roman Empire was declining, and they wanted to maintain power, and so they they just transferred the power of the Caesar to those of the Pope, but the infrastructure was the same, and so the whole idea of Rome kind of this kind of imperialistic trend of Rome reaching out and trying to control everything, that's so deeply ingrained in Christianity. It's like the evangelical aspect, it's like if we don't get them politically, we get their minds, and
trying to save people.
Yeah, no,
who don't even ask to be saved, right?
No, but I think it's more. It's not. I think that's the advertise. That's the marketing. It's like it's more control. It's like what the argument of Thaddeus Russell when he says, the way to organize Christian people is to install a kind of controlling mechanism by which they are controlling themselves. So you don't need to do it anymore. And so if you have like an Protestant ethic, moral, then they start to become their own kind of inquisitor,
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, that's the same. And also, if you offer to save people, right? What could be more manipulative than that?
Yeah,
I'm going to save you, and you create you generate fear of hell and all that, and that's how you.
There's a thought.
That's how you control people, but
yeah,
and it works pretty well.
Yeah, there's a thought, and I don't know yet how it's linked to what we're talking about, but I will express it anyhow because we're going by intuition here. But it's like in ancient tribes, if somebody wanted to be a leader, right? And so for the majority of human existence, like let's say 80-90% of human existence, like we were living in, let's say 80% like in tribal settings, the tribe, 200 people, the Dunbar number, whatever. And so if somebody wanted to be a leader, that was the criteria for excluding him forever be a leader, right?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So because it's like as soon as you want to become a leader, you're not capable. And I think like all our myth, the monomyth, the hero's journey, that he's reluctant, that's like kind of a codified expression of that. It's like if you want to, and maybe that's the link to our conversation, is like the impetus to control or to save anybody, that
Yeah.
excludes you from doing it, actually. And you
Yeah,
should
exactly.
And so it's like with all this leadership, it's like I told you I'm editing this book about leadership, and it's like the question is, why should we become leaders in the first place? Why is that something that our
No,
society?
we shouldn't. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
it's like as soon as you
we
want to
shouldn't.
become a leader, get the fuck out of here. It's like
Yeah, it has to be an intrinsic quality that you have. And if you have it, then you have it. If you don't, you don't. And also, if you're going to be a leader, you have to make a big sacrifice of some kind, and that would be your ego. So if you have this program to be a leader, let's say it is, again, maybe we could link this to the Protestant American thing where there's all these leadership programs. And I remember I was looking at this thing on Facebook, and there was this tantric festival in Sweden.
right.
And one guy was commenting, everybody here is a leader. Are there any participants in the, maybe I should just go as the participant, since everybody here is a supposed leader or a guru of some kind, right?
Yeah.
Who's not a leader here? And I thought that's kind of like these organizations that pop up make and promise leadership to everybody. When then everybody becomes a leader, it's really deceptive.
Yeah, you can't become a leader. I mean, the tribe decides who is the leader, but it's like as soon as you have an inclination to become a leader, you're not leader material. That's how it works.
And also, as soon, yeah, sorry, go.
Like anthropologically, there's like ample. I just read it, ample data that that you can't become a leader. That's what I want to say. And so it's like we should completely rethink our approach to this. It's like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, you can't become a leader through the efforts of your ego. You become a leader through your acts and your intrinsic qualities, and then you are spontaneously elected as a leader. And the other reason you wouldn't want to be a leader is because the leaders are always scapegoated and they're always vulnerable, and they the kings always get their head cut off, right? This is just the reason. One of the insights of Girard is we have democracy, so we don't have to cut off that king's head, right? We just re-elect them, but traditionally the king gets his head cut off, right? So it's not an enviable position to be in, and nobody should want to be in that position because you're just putting your head on the chopping block, basically.
Yeah, well, Wilbur recounts, some traditions from ancient tribes where, the leader was so embedded within his tribe, that he himself sacrificed, he himself was killing himself in order for, a new generation to emerge, basically, and a new leader to emerge, so for the rejuvenation. And so it was, the sacrifice of the king that was just a later coding of what was happening before that, the archaic man, that the leaders were kind of killing themselves, not everywhere, but partly,
Yes. Well, no, I mean, that is the dynamic, that is the scapegoat dynamic, right? You kill the leader, and then he becomes a god, and that god is going to lead the tribe, right? Once you've killed them, though. You have to, all the gods are are dead leaders that have been raised into gods.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think you even see it in the Jesus story, that I mean, he
mhm.
always could have left, and
Yeah, yeah.
so
So yeah, if you're a leader, you have to be like Jesus and say, "Go ahead, drive the nails in, guys." Who wants to do that?
yeah, and I don't know, it's like also like politically speaking, it's like you
Yeah.
see that the people that are they're like, why would you want to become like a prime minister or like a president of the United States or like even like a shitty foreign minister from Germany? Like why would you? It's like those people are utterly incompetent, and everybody knows it because they're driven by their need to become leaders. And I think that's the crucial issue here.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We've lost the ability to actually, like we do it through voting, or we do, I don't know, we've lost the ability to identify leaders. I mean, I'll identify leaders in the terms of spiritually wise people who can run groups. You know, we don't have any system to identify somebody like that. What is voting? Can you do that through voting? Absolutely not, right?
No, I think
That's why
still.
even the guru thing is better in some ways, because the guru is at least, I mean, I from, let's say, or the Roshi, or the, in traditional societies, the illuminated person, the leader of the Sufi group, or the Sadiq in the Jewish tradition. Those are the real leaders. But they're not leaders. They're leaders because they've sacrificed everything and become one with the divine, so to speak. Right. So they're not leading with their ego or their personality.
I
But
don't
we're
know.
just obsessed with egos and personalities, and in the culture, that's just pure paganism.
I don't know,
Which
Andrew.
is, with pure paganism, is the scapegoat mechanism, right?
I don't know, Andrew. I think we don't need a mechanism to find a leader because
No,
I
we
think
don't. Yeah, that's true. Also, yeah.
because I think it's because like because we have like 150 years or 250 years of the scientific method and psychology, like you know in relationship to the whole human history, that is like it's just such a tiny little blink of the moment, and mostly this process is completely unconscious, like collectively unconscious. It's like we
Mhm.
don't know. It's like a leader will emerge and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
It's like there are no conscious mechanisms by which we can elect a leader. That's like because it's
Well, I
unconscious.
didn't say elect. I mean, like, identify.
No, yes,
But,
also that's like completely autonomous and
well,
an unconscious process, I think.
yes, I think mostly it is. But I think, I think it also requires a bit of wisdom to identify a leader, right? And a humility to say, okay, this person is a leader. We just amazing
No, that
person. All right.
happens automatically.
What?
I think that
That
happens
that
automatically.
happens automatically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because it's like that, because there is so much unknown from what makes a leader in a specific setting of time, of culture, of geography, of whatever. And so it's like of course we try to model it afterwards, but that doesn't mean that because what a leader should do,
What
like
about genius? What
let me
about that?
let me exactly. And so let me just, because okay, so my idea is that, and it comes partly from Quentin Tarantino, because I think we talked about this. So he has like this relationship with the screen, and he says we have an automatic understanding if something is beautiful, if something fits, if something is told in a right way, right? And
Yeah.
so like because, and this is mostly deeper than language, this kind of understanding. And
Mhm.
so I think it's true, we have like an intuitive sense of beauty and truth, and then when a leader comes, there's something deep that we automatically recognize and accept. There's no conscious process. It's like, oh no, he is that.
Yes,
No,
yes, and
no
no,
question.
because
There's
sometimes we
no
do that with Hitler, right? Sometimes we do that with the
Hitler.
evil guy
What
as
does
well,
Hitler
right?
have to do with
No, no,
this?
no. No, I know. You always bring in Hitler as the end of conversation, right? It's like I just have to say the word Hitler, and okay.
I know it's like
No, no.
that was
I mean, we also attach ourselves
tackling
to
me with the Hitler word. That's kind of funny.
because you're a Nazi, you're German. So what can I say? I have to bring that in.
Okay.
Anyway, um, uh, that was a joke. Censors out there. Okay. Well, no, my point is that yes, we recognize a leader, and it emerges like if Winston Churchill emerges, okay, this guy is the guy who's going to help us with this and that, but we also identify with very demonic beings as well. That was my point. So we unconsciously identify with different archetypes that emerge, and they're often very deceptive. So I was made me think of Obama. When Obama was elected, everybody was like in this state of ecstasy and like, oh my God, Obama, right? Everybody's in this state of this is like Jesus Christ or something, right? But he wasn't Jesus Christ, So we placed the wrong archetype on the wrong person. He was just a lawyer, a pretty smart lawyer from Chicago, and kind of a laid back guy. Not the greatest leader in many ways. So not a good leader in other ways, but we put this huge archetype on him because he was supposed to represent this thing that's larger than life, like freedom from slavery and the whole Exodus story, and he was supposed to represent all that. But the guy couldn't. They gave him the Nobel Prize before he even did anything because people were in such an ecstasy about this leader that emerged. But we have to be careful because these leaders can be deceptive. Does that make sense what I'm saying, or
Yeah,
is
I'm
it?
thinking about this because it's like let's go back to Hitler, because in a way, okay, let's think about the period between like let's say 32 and let's be generous like 37, 30, 36, 37, right? We were, like just cut off all, the horrendous stuff that happened. And so like just look at him as a leader that was kind of like he had obviously a talent for speaking. The people were crying because they were in ecstasy, when he was talking. Even in the old, beer houses or whatever, like that for these long speaking events, it's like the people were getting like kind of mad crazy. And so there was some talent, and there was like I think there was like a cultural need, like not only in Germany but like globally to show that a system like fascism doesn't work, because like in the beginning everybody was enamored with it. The Americans, the Brits, the Italians, like everybody loved the idea of the complete social control, the political control of the state and of the individual lives. And everybody found that super interesting because we got so many people, and we needed to look for other ways of organizing. It's like the world in 1890 was a complete different world, and like in 1930, and so there had to be like had to be found different ways of how do you organize people. And so everybody was enamored with the idea, and then suddenly this idea showed its true colors. And so it's difficult to look at Hitler without all these kind of political ideas that were floating around at that time. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I had a couple of thoughts. Is like, well, I remember seeing this colorized kind of thing about the rise of Hitler on TV, and in the beginning, he seemed very normal, almost reassuring. He seemed kind of like, the norm. He seemed very ordinary.
Right.
That's the thing is, and we get the later version of Hitler is this sort of psychopath with the mustache, doing the goose step, kind of like Monty Python style, just this psychotic beast of a being, which we've transformed him into Satan.
Right.
He is the Satan of our. He is that's why you just bring in the Nazis. It's like you might as well say Satan when you talk about Hitler because it's the same archetype.
Right.
but the interesting thing I think is that when he first came, he did kind of seem like ordinary and reassuring, and he was talking about peace, and you know, uh,
There's an amazing interview with Orson Welles and Dick Cavett, because like I think like Orson Welles is a natural leader in a kind of way,
yeah.
but he and Orson Welles, like Hemingway, like amazing lives. And so in this interview section, he talks about meeting Hitler, and that is so interesting because he talks about how ordinary that person seemed, and
Yeah,
so
there you go.
not impressive at all, and yeah, and so there was a transformation that happened, from that, non-accepted artist and First World War a soldier into this kind of satanic maniac.
We've talked about Kennedy before. I'm thinking about why people put Kennedy up as being this great leader, and I wonder if he would be considered that if he had not been assassinated. I wonder if he'd be the god he is right now. He might have gone the same route as Obama, right? He might have been like, everybody believed in this new vision of America, blah, blah, blah. And then he turns out to be sort of mediocre,
Or the other way. Or he could have been like even a bigger statue than he is today.
I don't know. I think you have to kill the god for him to become a god. Same with Martin Luther King and all that. There's the way in which the king has to die, which is a dark truth about humanity. But and I think the way forward of that is, again, I think Girard's very profound, is to make conscious the scapegoat thing, so that we don't have to do that.
Maybe, yeah, sure, obviously, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, but I think you have a point there, because when we talk about people like Kennedy or even Hitler or Obama, it's like these are also like very careful created images, from spin doctors and whatever, and it's like, and media, how it frames. It's like, do we have lost the way of intuitively recognize a true leader because we're so oversaturated with external images of everybody, this is a leader, or we should be everybody should be a leader. It's like, I think there's an argument there that the truth to what you said, that it's harder for us now to recognize a true leader.
And also we could look at McLuhan here, and the fact that Kennedy was a TV leader, and Nixon was and Hitler were radio leaders, and that the medium is kind of so it's not only the propaganda and the marketing of a person, but it's actually how they are transmitted through what medium. So this would be a very good question, I think. What would be a leader in the internet age?
Right. I mean, I think Bart has a lot of things to say about this.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
the shaman and the what is the political leader in his words?
Well, there's Bart was it's a very profound idea of the split phallus. It's like you have the chief and the warrior, and if you have one without the other, if you have one without the other, then you have tyranny. Like if you just have the Egyptian pharaoh and he's the autocrat, and you have tyranny, but he needs to be balanced with the wise priest. So if you have those two working together, then you have a wholesome leadership. It's like the left and right brain working together, right? You need to bring those two things together. So I think that's very important. That's a great idea of Alexander's. It's like everybody should know that, right? If you want to be a leader and you're isolated and on your own, you're either going to turn into a tyrant, or you're going to get your head chopped off. One or the other. There's no, if you're alone doing it, and it's even just here, me and you doing this thing, Parallax. If we tried to run the whole thing by ourselves, we could do it in it might be more difficult, right? Because we need to have this dual processing going on.
Yeah. No, but I think the beauty of Parallax is that it's just an open network thing. you know, it's at least like from its inception, you know, it's like that you know, that in an ecosystem in digital, you know, it's like,
Sure.
and so there's no
But we're
hierarchical.
not announcing ourselves as this, we want to work with, I guess that's kind of a flat hierarchy kind of,
Yeah.
well, this is the question. Okay. So about leadership is like, okay, so let's say you don't, the leaders just emerge spontaneously, right?
Mm.
Through their intrinsic worth and value and what they're doing, not because they have an egoic desire to, control and manipulate people, which,
Yeah.
people do. But then they still have to have a vertical, there still has to be a vertical thing. There still has to be vertical depth, right?
Yeah.
If it's just flat and we pretend that everybody has the same intrinsic value, it's absolutely untrue because they don't. you know so what I noticed is that, okay, so in organizations I've been in and worked with, it's like, okay, somebody becomes kind of the leader, he's got too much vertical power, then there's a revolution, and they want to break that down, and then the revolution causes everybody to think they're equals, and then they go at, then it's the war of all against all.
Yeah.
So the challenge is to keep the vertical and the horizontal together, somehow, like the vertical being the intrinsic value hierarchy,
Yeah.
and the horizontal being just the community, or sort of the fact that everybody is given a chance and everybody is included and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think like there's also like a time constraint, you know, it's like just because you're like a leader once, that doesn't make you like a leader for all time. I think because like a leader on alpha, whatever word you use, it's like somebody who has like a special ability to solve some, let's say evolutionary or social problems at a given time, and as soon as he has done that, he can step down as a leader. But leader, like just for the sake of being a leader, it's like that's not how it works. You have to bring something to the table, something effortlessly, like an effortless solution for a problem, right?
Yeah.
And by virtue of showing and doing, and not just talking about this, just by doing, you're proving your evolutionary worth. Right, and that's why you become a leader. But as soon as you have solved that, you either step down or you become like, let's say, like a tyrant, because then you overstay your welcome. Because
exactly.
The environment, the niche has changed. You have to find new. The tribe has to find new ways of dealing with the new situation, and maybe a new leader has to emerge.
But so the time thing is also a generational thing too, right?
But also like in our time span, just because somebody is a leader in a certain situation, that doesn't make him a leader like for all time. Just like for an evolutionary set of problems. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. But this also is part of intrinsic leadership, is the ability to step down, okay?
Right.
And know when to step down. Just like, if you're a football player, you can't keep playing, right? You've had your time, and then you got to go do something else. Or you're,
like
it
Tom
happens
Brady.
to musicians.
He tries comedy now, so that's good for him.
Yeah. Who's that?
Tom Brady?
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who Tom Brady is?
No, I'm not. No. Who's Tom Brady?
Goodness, Andrew.
He must be one of those people that German people think are very popular.
Well, he's that famous tennis player, he has in this relationship with Greta Thunberg, and so
I haven't been keeping up with the pop culture, I'm afraid. No, but I was going to say that, like, okay, this is the spirit comes and inhabits you for a little while and then goes away. And then exactly. That's just very hard to do. It's very hard to say, okay, it's over that business, and I have to do something else now.
Yeah.
That's people want to hold on to. It's like the Rolling Stones want to keep playing the stupid songs
again and
forever, and they keep making millions of dollars doing it, but they're useless. They're just like, people still like to go through this sort of reenactment of a moment of when the muse was strong,
Right.
but it's not, it's no longer present, that's what, how do you, this is a good question, is like, how do you keep the muse alive, and how do you move it into different realms in gracefully when you, so you're not like Madonna trying to be sexy when she's 65 years old, you because Madonna is stuck with this image of Madonna way back in the 80s, and she wants to perpetuate that. But she it would be much more graceful if she decided, okay, I'm an older woman now,
Yeah.
and then I have to inhabit the archetype of being an older woman.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing what we're talking about, one of the last episodes where we're talking about the tower, because like the music and the image and everything that the, let's say, Rolling Stones stand for, that's the pyramid, that's the tower, and it has to be destroyed. But it's also like an involuntary, there has to be like a new trumpet, like sounding a new song, sounding something new, and that and by virtue of that, something new will emerge. But it's like the Stones are just the pharaohs and the dead pyramid. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And they're a tourist attraction, right? Basically,
yes.
They're just like going to see the pyramids or something. People, that might be fun to do sometimes. We got nothing against them; they're just doing it. But they're not inhabited by the divine, spirit of creation anymore.
Like, it's concretized energy. It's concretized spirit. It's like you can't just from the top down, from the bottom up, you can't just destroy it, because the Rolling Stones are the Rolling Stones. There has to be like a new spirit, like, it's like the same thing with let's say classical music. There was like Bach and Beethoven, and so you can't really destroy these kinds of structures. What you can do is like you can invent jazz, and you can rock and roll, and then the Beatles and Stones, and then there has to be a new king, a new inspiration of spirit has to come.
So maybe that is kind of an apology for the Rolling Stones doing their big tours, because it's like, okay, it's like historical or something. It's just a,
what the interesting thing is, just because what Schopenhauer says is like that existence is so bleak, and so bleak is the best word, that the only thing, and senseless, that the only thing that we should and can do is appreciate art. And that's the thing, because in art, and in this emergence of art, you always see, okay, there's that's the redeeming quality of everything. It's like if you had to judge humanity, it's like if you go to the Mart, the goddess of Mart, and you had to judge, like from an absolute viewpoint, you have to judge humanity. So what would you put in as a good thing in the other scale? And that would be art. And it's like and the beauty of art. That's what it is, right? And maybe
because it's well, the Tree of Life, there's the expressiveness, like I think it's called which is and then there's the contraction, right? So there's this expressiveness, and then there's this form. So, and in the middle, I guess you have I forget what it is, but that the art is in the middle, or the beauty is in the middle. It's in the dance between between the left hand and the right hand, between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Like I remember McGilchrist saying that there are moments of civilization where the two kind of things come together, right? And then you have the Renaissance, or you have these moments of shining civilization, and then they separate again, and then we have a period, like perhaps now is one of those periods where they're very separate, and then they'll come again to another golden age, and then it's sort of like this. There's a separation and a coming together, and
right,
But I remember, like, Johnny Rotten from Sex Pistols, he was saying that, like, they did a Sex Pistols reunion concert. He goes, this is bullshit. It's not real at all. This is what we're doing right now is a civil Civil War reenactment. That's what he called it. I thought that okay, he's right about at least he knows what he's doing and he's not pretending. He's like okay, he's going to make some money doing that, and it's a civil war reenactment. It's not the Civil War anymore. Yeah. It's museum. Like everything becomes a museum, right? And then that in a sense, everything that was great art or whatever, alive, full of the Holy Spirit, full of meaning, full of power, then it becomes a sort of the Louvre, right?
Right.
And
well, the exception maybe and this is like an acquired taste, because it's like I learned to love David Bowie, but it's like when you look at him, and so what I always find strange and fascinating at the same time was that every rendition that he did live of one of these old songs,
that's the way to do it.
Completely new, and it's like sometimes completely off, but he always, that's my feeling, my understanding, he tried to infuse these old songs with new life and new meaning and new spirit. And so I always cherish him for that. It's like, oh no, that's a weird rendition of that song, but it's like, no, it's beautiful again,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's the way you should. I mean, that's the difference between music and, let's say, popular representation or pop music, where you just, you play the song how it sounds on the album, which is ridiculous, right? That's not a live performance at all. It's just a copy.
Right.
Because everything has to be live and everything has to be invented in the moment. So the bands that do that are good, right? They're worth seeing. Even Bob Dylan. I mean, I saw a concert, like from a conventional sense, somebody would have thought it was the worst concert I ever saw, but I thought it was very interesting because here's Bob Dylan, okay, famous for all these songs. He's got a bit of arthritis in his hand, so he's not playing guitar anymore. He's playing the piano. He's walking around the stage, he's playing the piano. And he even did this at the very beginning. He played a couple things on the guitar and he threw his guitar away. He said, I'm not doing that anymore. That's not me now, all right? And then he played all these awful songs of Frank Sinatra. Like nobody wants to hear Bob Dylan play Frank Sinatra because Bob Dylan is like anti-Frank Sinatra. That's what he is. But he's doing Frank Sinatra songs from the 50s, these very sentimental songs from the 50s. Oh, no, and the weird thing was that he couldn't fucking sing. He never sings. He usually does it with his throat. But he was singing in a pure voice. It was so strange. And he was doing these songs of Frank Sinatra. And then he'd play his song. He'd play like Desolation Row, an indecipherable version of it. And everybody's like trying to clap. Like, what is this song? I'm trying to sing along. You can't sing along because it's something totally different, right? So everybody was sort of like, ooh. But it was something was going on there, It wasn't like my wife was very confused because she didn't know his music. If you know American music, you kind of can get into it because there's all these references, but it was something very esoteric and bizarre and strange going on, which means, okay, even though Bob Dylan as the 60s icon is dead, this is still a guy who's involved in the creative process.
Right. I mean, we went full circle. We started with the Jews, and now we're ending with the Jews, and with the image of Bob Dylan singing like a song from Frank Sinatra, which must have been hilarious. It's like, when I was 17, I can't even, I can't.
No, but he was singing, like, that's a strange thing. He could. I realized he could actually sing. He just was pretending he couldn't sing all the stuff.
Yeah.
Which was a strange thing to do. And so that's just the thing about great geniuses. They're always bizarre on so many levels and incomprehensible. And that's what makes great art and genius, right? Just bizarre, incomprehensible